The topic, of course, is Zimbabwe, the way forward. So, Mr. Moyo, what does the way forward mean for you, really, as far as Zimbabwe is concerned?
To me, the way forward means metamorphosis, changing, meaning that we're changing from one form to another. And for us to be able to achieve that, we first have to address where we came from, what led us to where we are today, and then find a way to correct those mistakes. Without acknowledging what got us there in the first place, there is no way we'll be able to solve and chart a way forward for Zimbabwe.
We cannot claim victory that, yes, President Mugabe is gone simply because we did it as young people. We need to understand that this was a controlled, managed uprising, and we know that the military used the frustrations of the young people, the activists who were saying that President Mugabe must go. But I don't think young people were just saying President Mugabe must go alone. We were saying we need a complete transition.
The recent events that brought about a different guard, is this what you would call change?
Absolutely, it's change. And you can see the change happening as we speak right now. But to address the primary question here, what is the way forward for Zimbabwe? The way forward for Zimbabwe from a ZANU-PF perspective is, number one, economic recovery.
How do you look at, or do you see the way forward for Zimbabwe, at least from the African Union perspective? You said, for example, that there was no coup in Harare.
According to the Zimbabwean constitution, the army could step in the event there's a possibility of instability within the country. They acted within the constitution to do that. So there was no coup, but there was provision within the constitution for the army to do that because of the condition on the ground at that time.
What do you see? Do you look forward to having, perhaps for the first time in many years, according to some people, an election that would be free, fair, transparent, credible, and verifiable?
Not without the necessary electoral reforms. I mean, those electoral reforms need to be in place for that to happen. The reason that they've not been free, fair, and credible is because the situation on the ground has not allowed for that. We need a new independent electoral body.
Anything is possible, but we shouldn't forget that we still have the same system that has not been willing to invite everybody to observe the election. I have seen the good side of ZANU-PF. I've also seen the not so good side of opposition. Why do I say so? When there were elections in the last elections that we had, we went all over Zimbabwe, and we saw how young people were willing to be the voice in both political parties, but there's still voter apathy. They're not interested in then going to vote. So we cannot talk about a free and fair election as well if young people are just all talk and they're not willing to vote. And I will still respond to you. Young people in ZANU-PF do not vote. Young people in ZANU-PF just go for these rallies, they go for functions, most of them. It's only a selected few, it's not, I can't say a selected few, it's only a few that have the knowledge and understand the power of their vote that then go and register to vote.
Let's give the new government some time to perform and criticize them where criticism is worthy.
Yeah, you seem to think that all the opposition need to do, or the other stakeholders need to do, frankly, is simply mobilize and organize votes. But the electoral body is very significant, and I'm sure you are following very closely the developments in Kenya. So how can we be sure, frankly, that because you simply have an electoral body that has been established by, as per, the Zimbabwean constitution and what have you, that in fact it is independent enough?
Thank you. With all due respect to the Kenyan example, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission is far different from what we saw in Kenya. And again, it's not the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission that votes. Their job is to simply ensure that they are running the elections in accordance to the laws of the land.
But they count the vote and announce the results.
Oh, yes, and the opposition will be there to monitor every step of the way.
There is Mark High who says the opposition is non-existent right now. Their silence is helping ZANU-PF rebrand itself.
The reason we don't get coverage as MDC is because of the suppression of free media in Zimbabwe. Our existence is there, but our message is probably not being aired for everybody to hear or listen.
What really disappoints me when I listen to my brother here, Moyo, opposition, again, like the question on Facebook was, the opposition is disorganized. So you cannot just sit there and make noise when you're not organized. Articulate your agenda so people can understand where you want to take the country to. Don't just sit there and complain and complain and complain, but you have nothing to tell the people as to how you plan to change the situation that we have today. Continent.
Dr. Chihombori Quoa, if you were to talk to us from the deepest, better part of the bottom of your Zimbabwean heart and soul, does the opposition in Zimbabwe really have the freedom to organize and mobilize, really?
The opposition, I do believe, has the freedom to organize, but they're not organized within themselves. They need to, first of all, make sure they're organized and articulate their agenda. We need strong opposition. We welcomed MDC when MDC started, but MDC needs to be organized. It is just that simple. Don't run away from it, my brother.
Thank
it's a
you.
fact.
What is your strategy as MDC? That's what we want to know. You need to stop commenting on things that we already know. We want to know what your strategy is. ZANU-PF has a strategy. They did this, and as somebody alluded, they probably hoodwinked us, but that's their strategy. What is yours?
Thank you. Go for it.
Our strategy really is for our people to have their vote secured. Because it starts with that. It starts with building a government for the people, by the people. And I think in terms of how we can get there, we know that we have the support of the majority of Zimbabweans.
The African Union, is it supporting ZANU-PF? Is it partisan in terms of the parties that it supports? And if MDC is unorganized, as you mentioned, what do you give them as advice as African Union? Do you also represent them to allow them to be able to be organized?
Like I stated, we would like to have an effective opposition in Zimbabwe. It is healthy for our democracy. So it is disappointing when we see what could have been a very effective Zimbabwean opposition just not getting itself together. So we are stating the fact. We support the government of Zimbabwe, whether it was Mugabe or President Mnangagwa. Where we are today, we have a system in place. We have a new government in place. We would like to see the Zimbabweans give this new government a chance.
My question is the African Union, are they organized? I think they are one of the most useless organizations. Okay? No offense, but I think there's, with all the corruption and the injustices in Africa, they espouse those things, okay?
I think it's important that first and foremost, when I listen to those who claim to be Africans, you're also forgetting that you are the African Union. The African Union is as strong as its people. First and foremost, membership in the African Union is voluntary. Countries are members of the AU because they choose to be members of the AU. Secondly, the AU has no sovereignty as a union, but the individual countries do. So we play a supportive and advisory role to the countries, but at the end of the day, the countries have got to make their decisions. One. Secondly, when you talk about being disorganized, I go back to what I just said, the 6th region.